vaccines, and a new bill, which will get your kids back in their school buildings fastest. Plus, fed up with fighting the Department of Labor, desperate Kansans take their pleas for help to the State House. And a record cold spell, rolling blackouts, and rising energy prices. What it all means for you. That's what we're talking about right now on Kansas Week.
Southwest National Bank has proudly served Wichita and its surrounding communities for over 100 years. We are happy to support PBS Kansas Public Television.
This is Kansas Week, and I'm your host, Pilar Pedraza. This last week was one so full of big stories, we literally had to roll the dice to figure out where to start today. We begin with the rising cost of heating your home and worries about price gouging. KIC's Hannah Baker explains.
This cold snap has furnaces running constantly, and experts say it's going to cost us all.
We would maybe spend $150,000 for gas for an entire year, and yet based on today's price, we're going to spend $400,000 today. It is astronomical.
It's taking a toll on small towns like Keachai. Mayor John Spear says the city's price per unit has gone from $3 to $600 in just a week. City leaders are looking for options to spread out payments over a period of time, but residents could still pay anywhere from 10 to 20 times their normal bill.
One really important aspect of this is that, that gas prices aren't regulated. So that's why they're able to, it's whatever consumers are willing to pay for that commodity.
Leading Cake News asked the question if it's possible this massive increase could be a type of price gouging.
If you control the supply of something and then charge an outrageous amount, that would be price gouging.
We went to local attorneys for answers.
I mean, obviously, raising something from $3 to $600 is very suspicious. I think anybody would say that. But we don't know the specific facts.
The suppliers of necessary goods and services like food or emergency supplies, fuels, etc., cannot significantly increase their prices in order to exploit the situation. On the other hand, price increases may be justified by additional costs that the supplier incurs as a result of the disaster.
The Kansas Corporation Commission announced Wednesday it will be looking into the issue.
There will be time for investigation. We'll be asking a lot of questions at our level. There will be a lot of questions asked at the federal level.
And joining me to discuss everything that's happened this last week, we have State Representative Nick Hoheisel, a Wichita Republican, joining us by Zoom. And here on set with me, State Senator Aletha Faust-Goudeau. And Aletha, you're here. I'm going to start with you. Price gouging or not, this is an issue that's going to hurt a lot of Kansans very badly.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for having me. I would say I'm certainly not going to support that. I'm already talking to some of those with Kansas Gas Service, Evergy, everybody. I think it's something that I think usually we defer the cost to the customer. I think it's time for those entities to try to come up with something and bear a brunt of this issue. I have 2 daughters, and they both called me and said, "Mom, our heat is off." They were in an apartment complex where they were selected to have their power outage. I'm wondering if they will get a prorated bill. This is going to hurt so many senior citizens, those on fixed incomes. I'm concerned about how they are selecting those that the power would go off for a while. I'm concerned about those with medical equipment in their homes. I remember the year in, I believe, 2006 when we had the ice storm and how we had to pay for that. We need to, this is unprecedented times that we're dealing with, and we cannot just continue to pass the cost on to the customer.
Yeah, and certainly passing the cost on. I know that some natural gas producers have talked about this storm being a windfall for them because of the increase in prices. They're making a lot of money. And in the story, Nick, they talked about how gas prices are not necessarily regulated. Is it perhaps time for the discussion of whether or not that should change?
I mean, that discussion could possibly come a little further down the road. Obviously, these price increases and price spikes are very concerning to us up here, and they're going to require us to carefully monitor. We will continue to see if there's actions we can take as a legislator to help ease this burden on utility customers. This is something that we're going to monitor. I know our Attorney General, Derek Schmidt, has started looking into this as well. He's commented on it, that he's concerned as well. And he's looking to see if there's any action he can take legally on the state level to kind of crack down on if there was price gouging. Obviously, it's concerning. I heard the story out of Winfield. They budget $1.5 million a year for natural gas for their city. And right now they've increased to $10 million bill. So obviously we have to figure out a plan on how state, local levels we're going to be able to help ease this burden.
Yeah.
We need to look at the federal level as well, because this is not just in Wichita, it's not just in Kansas. I've been talking to some relatives that live in Dallas, Texas, and normally they don't get this type of weather. So this is a country-wide situation where we may have to pull some federal dollars down to help people out.
Yeah, and all of this, of course, federal and state level, coming at a time when lots of money going out on the pandemic, not so much money left over for free spending.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, these price hikes coming at the same time many Kansans were dealing with random energy blackouts, as Aletha mentioned, all this week due to an overtaxed system. As KSAN Capitol Bureau reporter Rebecca Chung shows us, even state lawmakers aren't sure what comes next.
Hundreds of thousands of Kansans have had their power shut off with little notice, and I spoke with lawmakers who are unsure of what the next steps will be to prevent this from happening again. Freezing temperatures are driving up energy use statewide and forcing power outages for thousands of Kansans.
Rolling power outages are one way to conserve some energy so that we can continue to meet demand.
The Kansas Corporation Commission is planning to investigate the situation after the state gets through the energy crisis to see if other factors are at play.
We'll be looking at the entire situation and reviewing it in great detail.
Now, Kansas lawmakers are weighing in on the issue, looking into what can be done to better prepare for the future.
It affected so many people, and I'm sure they're going to do a critique afterward.
This is a very unusual situation. I'm talking to all the different people to see, where are the problems? Is there anything we can do?
But lawmakers are still unsure of what exactly can be done to make sure this doesn't happen again.
All of us are going to be looking at why this happened and what, if anything, we can do the next time it happens.
Overtime and high energy costs do come into play, but Evergy says it will be working with regulators to spread those payments out over several bills. Right now, the focus is on keeping the power on for as many people as possible. At the Capitol, I'm Rebecca Chung.
And Nick, right now, of course, the temperature is warming up, not so much a concern about keeping the power on anymore, but we are dealing with these issues of why did we have these blackouts? What kind of conversations have you been hearing around the State House on this topic?
So yeah, I've spoken with Evergy several times in the last 5 days on this issue and trying to be updated. They've done a pretty good job giving us updates daily on this. We have to. We do. Representative Carmichael, I believe in that promo there, made an excellent point that we will be able to go back and review what went wrong. And from what I'm hearing, this was an issue, unprecedented. Obviously, it's not all on Evergy, but it was a perfect storm. I mean, we had gas wells freezing up, gas pipes freezing up. We had windmills that were frozen. It was a perfect storm. And we get our energy from the Southwest Power Pole. And the Southwest Power Pole covers basically from the Dakotas on down to the northern part of Texas. And when you look at where this winter storm and vortex hit, it was basically that whole thing. So when we're having snowfalls in Texas and frigid temperatures in Texas, that's going to, take a lot of power, a lot of energy to keep those homes on. So we'll look back, we'll try to figure out where the failures were, see if there's anything we could address on a state level and just continue to work to the future on this.
All right. And Aletha?
If I may say so, I don't know all the logistics, and I'm not even going to try to go there, but I do know this, is that in the area where I live, for the past 2 years, every 3 months, there would be an outage in the area. And I'd call neighbors and they would call me, and then I would call Mr. Beasley with Evergy and say, why is this happening? And we've contributed some of it to squirrels going into the box there. But here's the thing, as I mentioned, we've had this type of situation in 2006. You would think we have learned by then, and we need to be proactive and prepare for this. It's not like the first time it's happened, and so we pay high bills, and we really do, as Representative said, we need to have everybody at the table looking into the best solution for our constituents.
And you kind of touched on the thing I wanted to talk about next, which is the infrastructure. I've been doing a lot of reading on this over the last week, and it seems like, well, yes, there were issues as far as the weather and the production end. A lot of the problems were really at the delivery end of all of this. And as you said, these are issues that we've known about for quite some time.
So we've got to do something. And like I said, I'm not an expert in that area, but those individuals, those businesses and entities that do this, they need to do a better job. I've even heard the stories about those with solar panels and so forth. Everybody is suffering here, and so we don't want people freezing. We're already dealing with COVID-19, so we need to jump on this issue, and we need to do it fast.
Yeah. And certainly a life and death issue at the delivery end. At the production end of this, though, also a very big financial issue. I mean, Nick, are you hearing anything from Western Kansas lawmakers yet about the impact this may be having on the Kansas oil and gas industry?
I haven't had those conversations with them yet. I was curious on how this weather impacts wheat and harvest. So I had those conversations. But I think you do touch on a great point with the infrastructure, and this shows that we need, and it needs to come from the federal level, a national infrastructure bill. And hopefully this is something that the Biden administration prioritizes, and we can get some real infrastructure upgrades on down, and that would be a great stimulus to kick off our economy as well.
And infrastructure, certainly something that both statewide and nationally we've kind of been struggling with the last decade or so. Yeah. All right. Well, the energy problems this week, not the only thing frustrating some Kansans. Tens of thousands are still trying to fight their way through the state's unemployment system. Now, some taking their frustrations to the State House. One of those demonstrations happening on Friday. We go back to KSN's Rebecca Chung to explain how they got started.
Kansans March is a series of protests set to take place at the State House on Friday. Cassandra Dickerson, a mother of 3, is the organizer of the event. After going months without pay and hearing from others struggling to make ends meet, she's deciding to take action. She says herself and many others have concerns that are going unanswered.
I'm sorry. Who's responsible for this? Why does the state of Kansas just get to do this to us? And there's no discipline. There's nothing.
A state spokesman says the department has been transparent about the delay in payments. The state points to an outdated computer system as the main problem. At the Capitol, I'm Rebecca Chung.
And Oletha, as we discuss this issue, it's almost, as Nick mentioned before the show started, become a weekly segment in the show discussing what's going on with the Department of Labor. What are you hearing from constituents? I know from our end, the number of questions that we have and concerns coming in from the public hasn't changed. The type of questions and concerns have.
Pilar, I'm laughing because it's been ridiculous. It's been sad. Just yesterday, I have on my personal emails, 50 people have emailed me regarding their unemployment issues. My Senate email account, it's just thousands now. At one point, I had a good contact person within the Department of Labor too, and I would and people are texting me, they're inboxing me on Facebook. I go to the grocery store. Even at my brother's funeral, people asked me about their unemployment issues and telling me that they call, they get someone on the phone sometimes, and then they're put on hold, and then it clicks off, or it just rings forever and ever. I have suggested a centralized 800 number where people can call. the majority of my time since the legislature has reconvened on January 11th in my office, and my other office mates, we're just taking those calls. We've not even been able to really address our bills legislation, my office assistant, because he's responding to those calls. We did recently get another way to contact information within the Department of Labor to send those, their last four of their social, their name, their phone number, and just ask for a phone call. But this is bad, and the communication. I won't even say that the outdated system is the problem anymore. It's the communication. We've got to do better. I know that we've got COVID-19 going on, and that the governor is, having updates on that periodically. But I wish that there were a public service announcement every other day on the news somewhere to tell people what they need to do. This is insane. This is one of the most devastating situations that I have encountered in the legislature, and we need to do something about it, because it's become like, to myself and other legislators we're talking, it's like a part-time job just to respond to all of the calls. And I get them on my home landline, my cell phone, personal email address, the state email address, and it is sad. The young lady there, I've talked to her, and it's sad to hear the stories of people who are just struggling to pay their rent and eat, and there's no money. Wow. We've got to do something, and I just recently asked the minority leader, Senator Dinah Sykes, as the assistant minority leader of the Democratic Party in the Kansas Senate, I just said to her yesterday, when are we going to have a representative from the governor's office come and talk to us and let us share? We've got to fix this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know you talked a lot about how you have this unending deluge and kind of trying to figure out how to help people. We're dealing with that, the same thing in the newsrooms. We call, we try to get answers. Transparency is certainly an issue. All these phone calls and emails to us and to public legislators hasn't really seemed to been able to make much of a difference. Nick, from your perspective, will a series of demonstrations change anything either?
So yeah, and to kind of go off of your thoughts and the great senator's thoughts on transparency, I'm going to disagree with the spokesperson for the Department of Labor. They haven't been transparent. This has been a failure from the beginning. They have refused to work with us. They have not been transparent. If you go on the Kansas Department of Labor Facebook page, you see comment after comment after comment from folks pleading with them. Just tell us something. There's been no communication. There's been no transparency. I'm hopeful that protests work. Yeah, absolutely. I hope they call the governor's office morning, noon, and night, because that's how serious this is. I know our House Commerce Committee this week started work on HB 2196, which is a bill to modernize and provide oversight for the failing Department of Labor. And this bill was the result of the hard work we've put into this as a legislator to make positive change and helping with the Department of Labor. The really frustrating piece right now is we have so many Kansans struggling to get payments. But then we find out when we get back up here, we've lost somewhere possibly north of $400 million to fraud. And that $400 million could be more, is fraud that we've lost to possibly overseas accounts. But we can't get payments to regular Kansans that are struggling right now and need it. It is very frustrating. And we have to do better. And quite frankly, the governor's office has to do better as well.
Yeah. And Nick, I know that there's been some discussion at the State House of perhaps the legislature taking over the oversight of the Department of Labor. Do you see that happening? Do you see it making a difference?
It's possible. Right now, all options are on the table. We have to get hold of this because, quite frankly, we've seen nothing different since we've reconvened from the Department of Labor than has been going on for 8+ months now. So, if we need to step up to the plate and take this over, we surely will.
All right. Well, another big debate going on statewide in Kansas, whether or not to bring Kansas kids back into physical classrooms, and it's reaching a crescendo. Two different groups have plans to make that happen in different ways. We begin with Cake's Bree Smith and a plan to vaccinate teachers in Sedgwick County.
I'm in full support of getting our children in schools to continue their learning, growth, social interactions, and health and well-being.
The county will receive an additional 3,500 doses a week to help accomplish the task of vaccinating nearly 12,000 staff members if they choose to get the injection.
It's our goal to make sure that everyone who works in a school, K through 12 here in our community, has access to vaccine.
We're told each school district will have control of how they distribute the vaccines. USD 259 says it will probably sort people by age and health risks. Dr. Min says eventually everyone in the county who wants to get vaccinated will have access to it, but it's important to stay patient.
In order for us to get to a place where we can ever consider opening up our community entirely, we must continue to use the tools in our toolbox to keep each other safe and healthy.
And this is part of the governor's back-to-school vaccine plan. It comes as Senate President Ty Masterson introduced a bill that would require schools to reopen by March 26th. And we all know kids would be better off in school, but you know, for teachers, there's a big concern. They're the ones who are actually endangered by being in that congregate setting. A lot of concerns there.
Absolutely. And I am in favor of schools allowing kids to come back full time. However, if it's safe, if they've got all the masks, all the precautions that are needed, absolutely. I think that kids need to, they feed off of each other and they need to be together, but they need to be in a safe environment. Also, we need to get a better message out there to the public that if the vaccine is free, if you need insurance to do it. I represent a highly populated constituency of those who are uninsured, underinsured, and they are struggling to pay their utility bills and to pay rent and not be evicted. And so all of us, the city of Wichita, the governor, our Sedgwick County commissioners, we need to do a better job of having one message out there. People are hearing conflicting things, and as we know, and we're hearing about it, and we're not making this up, that this COVID-19 has affected African Americans, minorities more than any people. And so when we talk about who should be first of getting vaccines and how we select them, we need to be mindful of our own evidence of where vaccines need to go first, where testing needs to go, and then one last thing, we need to again. I've been at the funeral home. The funeral home director asked me. They said we should be essential. We should be high up on the list. We come in contact with so many different people, and they're not. And so I think we need to relook at how we are distributing the vaccine and who to and to who.
Yeah, and I know, to be very clear, you do not have to pay for the vaccine. It is covered by the government. We want to get that message out. You're very correct on that. And as we deal with this issue, Nick, I know there's also something of a timing issue. The Senate president wants everybody back in school by March 26th, but there's no way to get teachers vaccinated by then with the two-part vaccination.
Yeah, and so I think that, I'm in favor of getting schools back open. I believe we can do it in a safe manner, especially as we talk about opening the economy back up more. And childcare is an important piece of that, getting kids back in school so the parents can return to work. Elevating the teachers, getting them vaccinated, that's another huge part. We'll start, rolling into that soon. I know that I saw the press conference, I believe, yesterday from the old downtown library. Sedgwick County is going to set that up as a vaccination site, which is great news, great coordination. Yeah. So I do believe it is time to get our schools back open, try to get back to some normalcy.
Yeah. All right. Well, talking about some normalcy, how about a political fight at the city level? Local control by voters is the argument some Wichitans plan to take to the State House this next week as they testify on a bill that could decide the future of a Wichita landmark.
What to do with Century 2 has been an ongoing fight in Wichita for a few years. Now it's a fight that's making its way to the State House, where the Kansas House local Government Committee is set to hear what you think about a bill to require a public vote on the future of Century 2 and the old Wichita Public Library building. The Save Century 2 Committee wrote House Bill 2233 to require a majority vote of Wichitans before the city can demolish city-owned buildings that are on the National Register of Historic Places and are larger than 80,000 square feet. The committee says more than 17,000 Wichitans signed the petition for a vote, and it's urging those who want to save the buildings to send written testimony to the committee before next week's hearing.
And Nick, it's kind of unusual to see a city issue like this elevated to the State House level, but either way, it's certainly been a passionate issue here in the city of Wichita.
It has. And when I was knocking doors for the November election, that was surprisingly one of the bigger issues that came up, is my thoughts on Century 2 and what I thought we should do with it. I'm always in favor of giving people the power to make those choices, especially on the local level. I know that legislation, I met with a few of the folks last week that were here with that legislation, and they wanted to discuss it. So, we'll see where it goes on the state level. But again, I'm always in favor of giving that control back to the locals.
And written testimony is really what they're asking people to send in. They have a handful of members of the committee that are going to be testifying in person, but they're asking everybody to send in written testimony. Somebody who's been at the State House for a long time, how much impact does written testimony have on decisions that are made?
Well, I tell you, it has an effect. However, that personal phone call, that personal email, not the all the emails that we get that says the same thing, those don't really work as much, that chain letter, but that personal contact does. I've already been contacted by those advocating to save Century 2. They've been in my office. I actually took a selfie with them, and they gave me their paperwork, and they emailed all of us the same thing. And I'm just going to say this, I'm going to be supporting it because I have a big, huge picture in my office of Century 2. I love Century 2. It wouldn't be the same without it. I know others want to, reconstruct it, do something new and exciting, and I think that we can build onto it to improve it.
All right. Well, Oletha, Nick, thank you both very much for joining me this week. We'd love to hear what you think on these issues. To continue the conversation on social media, just look for PBS Kansas or Pilar Pedraza TV on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. For now, stay safe and warm, and have a great week.
Southwest National Bank has proudly served Wichita and its surrounding communities for over 100 years. We are happy to support PBS Kansas Public Television.